Welcome to Candidate Conversations, brought to you by DCTV. I'm Larry Brown Jr. Today I'll be talking to your candidates for delegate to the House of Representatives, mayor, chair of the DC City Council, and at-large Ward 3 and Ward 5 council members. Ahead of our conversation, candidates selected 2 topics from a list of 9. This is an opportunity to hear from the candidates ahead of the general election. This is not intended to be a debate. Candidates have an opportunity to respond for up to 2 minutes, uninterrupted, and they will not be allowed to interrupt other candidates during their response. Thank you so much for joining us, gentlemen, for today's Candidate Conversations. I'm Larry Brown Jr., and I'm so glad that you are here to join us. We're going to start by letting all of you introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about yourself. We're going to start with you, David.
Good afternoon. Thank you, DCTV, for having us today. My name is David Krukoff. I'm a third-generation Washingtonian. I'm running for the DC Council seat from Ward 3. I am the conscientious, centrist, pro-choice Republican running. I know that's a mouthful, but I would like everyone to check out our campaign. And I think that if you do that, now my phone's ringing, so I'm going to tell my mom, but I can't help her, I think that if you do that, that you'll see that I represent our ward well. And I'm just the type of Republican that people want. I never voted for Donald Trump. I have thoughtful views about our economy, about the migration of our council from the mid-left to the far left, and I am a democracy warrior. And I'm looking to gain the affinity and trust of the voters in Ward 3, and I'm running under the notion that it's better to participate than spectate. But now, as of tomorrow, the voting boxes are open, so it's up to everyone else to participate. So we look forward to gaining your trust, your affinity, and your vote starting tomorrow. Thank you so much. My name is David Krukoff, davidforward3.com.
Matthew, let's go to you.
Hi there. I'm Matt Fruman. I'm the Democratic nominee running for the Ward 3 council seat. I'm one of the few attorneys in Washington, D.C. I'm a husband, father of 3 DCPS graduates of Janney, Deal, and what was then Wilson, now is Jackson Reed. I've been very active in my community for a decade plus, serving on my ANC for 6 years, half of them as chair, serving on the board of Tenleytown Main Streets for 6 years, half of them as chair, chairing the board for the Lisner Home and Assisted Living Nursing Facility on Western Avenue that serves low-income DC seniors. The list of organizations and initiatives that I've been a part of in the city and in the ward goes on for too long for a 2-minute introduction, but I have been very, very active, and I take a lot of pride in having a record of accomplishment of getting things done, working with people, building coalitions, and getting to real solutions. That's what I did at the Lisner Home, where we're building a 93-unit, deeply affordable senior housing project, the first ever Housing Production Trust Fund project in Ward 3, and we're doing it with the buy-in and support of our neighbors. That's what I've done in countless projects on the ANC. That's what I've done in the sphere of education, where I built a citywide organization, Coalition for DC Public Schools and Communities, to advocate on behalf of schools in every corner of the city. And the Ward 3 Education Network was created at my dining room table. I want to bring that approach of working with people, listening, forming consensus to get things done on the council. I'm asking for your vote on November 8th or earlier. And thank you very much.
And rounding us out, Adrian.
Hi, I'm Adrian Salzgiver. I'm your Libertarian Party candidate for the Ward 3 DC City Council seat. And I've been involved in politics all of my life for over 50 years. And when I first moved to Washington, DC, my friend said, "Oh, you got to meet Carol Schwartz." So I went down there and immediately helped Carol for years down at City Council, and that's when I started learning about the workings of the district government and home rule and everything. And so I've always worked on political campaigns for the candidates I like and for the initiatives that I like. And right now, I'm working on Rodney Red Grant for Mayor campaign. My friend Bruce Majors, fellow libertarian, is running for delegate to Congress. And I'm also working on Initiative 82. So I've always been very busy. I'm always out there collecting signatures on petitions. So I talk politics to everybody. So I know people's concerns, and I have my finger on the pulse of Ward 3. And I've never been an ANC commissioner, but I've always been friendly with them, and I always either go to a meeting or watch it on Zoom or talk with my commissioners to find out what's going on with my ANC. And so I believe I'm the best choice because I'll be able to work on the city council because I already know many of the council members. I'm friendly with them. And that's why I believe I'm the best choice. Thank you.
Matt, I want to come to you for this next question, and then all of the other candidates will have the same question as well. What do you see as the biggest issue or problem facing DC, and how will you address it?
Well, thank you very much for the question. There actually are a lot of challenges facing the district. One of them that has been a particular focus for me is education. And what we've seen during the pandemic is an enormous amount of learning loss that's happened across the city. We just had the PARCC scores released. Those are the annual test of how our children are doing. And the picture is not pretty. It wasn't pretty before, and it's even worse today. And we need to be giving all of our children a chance to succeed, which means really focusing on education and really focusing on investing resources in our schools, particularly in the places where we've seen the greatest learning loss, in order to make a difference for our children's future. The city's reeling, and everybody is trying to figure out what's going to be the new normal after the pandemic. And strengthening downtown is going to be a very important priority, and strengthening WMATA is another very, very important priority that we face as a city. But in the wake of the pandemic, the list of challenges, I'm afraid, is pretty long, and we're going to have to put our shoulders down and try to come up with solutions to strengthen the city going forward.
Thank you. Adrian, how do you respond to that as well?
Oh, could you repeat the question?
Sure. What is the biggest problem or issue facing DC, and how do you plan to address that?
Oh, that's easy. Very easy question. The biggest problem facing the city is Mayor Muriel Bowser and her tyrannical orders, and the fact that the city council has abdicated most of the responsibility to the mayor. And so I see that is the biggest problem, as the city is being run from the top down, from the mayor's office and her bureaucracy, and people really don't feel like they have much to say. So to me, that's pretty obvious. We need
Thank you.
to turn the power to the people is what we need to do here.
Awesome. Thanks, Adrian. And we're going to round this question out with you, David.
Well, our campaign is based on the idea of political diversity. So a little bit along the lines that Adrian mentions, but I have to mention that Adrian has done nothing in the campaign to get himself on the ballot, but get appointed by his party at the last minute. So to me, that's a flaw of our democracy. I'm a democracy warrior. Our campaign starts on the premise that different points of view provide a foundation for better decision-taking. There's never been a council person elected to the council from a ward who is a non-Democrat. We have a winner-take-all closed primary. Everybody is pigeonholed into being a Democrat. I'm for open primaries. I kind of like the system they have in Alaska where they have top 4 advanced and they have ranked choice voted in the general election. Perhaps if Adrian was part of the system early on and we had that kind of system, he would have been one of the top 4 in advancing to the final round. Right now, Matt Fruman and I are working extremely hard and been around in this race for 9 months. And Adrian has just joined us. So I don't think that that is a good example of the way democracy should be in the District of Columbia. We have to have a stronger democracy in DC. Absolutely, Adrian's absolutely correct about that. There is too much top down. But as somebody who's a political reformer, member of the National Association of Nonpartisan Reformers, I believe that we have to instill the systems in our government, in our modus operandi, in our election processes that work better. Another example is that our boxes are open starting tomorrow. That's 4 weeks before November 8th. I'm all for voting early, but that's too early. A lot can happen between now and November 8th. I could get hit by a bus. We don't know. There's a lot of things that could come out, and I don't think that that's, again, this is something that I believe is built in to enforce incumbency. And I'm running against the machine.
Adrian, are you in support of the CDC's current low, medium, high community level ranking system when it comes to the COVID-19 pandemic?
No, I am not in favor of the CDC. We need to get rid of the CDC. The CDC is there to protect the big pharmaceutical companies and the money that is, that's their interest. And so, no, I'm not in favor of anything the CDC says or does. We need to get rid of it as soon as possible.
Thank you. Matthew, as a longtime Ward 3 resident and advocate, your platform lists specific ways you plan to address schools and overcrowding. How important is this issue across the educational landscape, and how can your initiatives benefit all the students across the landscape?
So, well, I mean, Ward 3 has its own distinctive set of issues because our big issue in Ward 3 is overcrowding in our schools, and we need to solve that. And that's going to require adding capacity. We're actually getting to that place in Ward 4. Roosevelt and Coolidge and Ida B. Wells and McFarland are also quite crowded, and we may need to be looking for more capacity there. But the key thing when you think about my initiatives in the education space and what I think is important is we need to emphasize support for our neighborhood matter of right schools. What's critically important to families is to know that they can go to a place from pre-K through 12th grade. They can see the path, it's predictable, and it's a quality education for their children. And that's what leads to them staying in the District of Columbia and building community. Where we are now in too many parts of the city, we don't have strong middle and high schools that give parents that sense of security that their children can stay and go through those schools. They may choose something else, but they need to know that they have an option close to them that can work in order to keep them in the city. Right now, parents too often have to rely on a lottery, and they should have access to a lottery. But if you have a lottery and you don't have a solid matter of right options, it's not a choice, it's a chance in a lottery. And that's not the right approach for our city and if we're going to grow our city. So the important thing for me is investing in our neighborhood schools in all parts of the city so that schools in every part of the city can meet the needs of the children in those communities. That's going to be different from place to place, but it's a critical priority.
David, discuss your current view of policing in the district and if there's any change that you see necessary to policing.
Well, I certainly would like to see more police officers in our neighborhoods on a regular basis. I'd like to see interaction between police officers and the community. I'd like to see police officers on bicycles. I'd like to see, I wish for the police department to be enforced or backed up by the council and by our judicial system in a manner that is supportive of their hard work. I rode around with a police officer in a ride-around program, and she rarely is with another officer, so she's riding with, the buddy system is not in place in her police cruiser. And she is also regularly having to work overtime on a weekly basis. So she's not getting a lot of sleep, and she's and the police department's paying time and a half for her extra hours. So we have to cultivate more officers. We have to recruit them. We have to not demonize them. I think that our council has created some, maybe not entirely purposefully, but has created some enemies. I mean, people just who have cars, and I think that's purposeful. Police officers are not the most popular types of persons to the council, I believe. I also believe that the council has messaged to us over the past few years to be overly accommodating of offenses, whether it might be carjacking or it might be jumping a gate on a in the metro system. The consequences that should be more enforceable than they are is not occurring to the degree that I think is healthy for our city.
And we are at time.
Okay, thank you so much for the question.
Sure thing. Adrian, could you discuss your view for free, high-quality education across the district?
Well, the first thing that needs to be done is to get the schools away from Mayor Bowser. We need to localize. We need to decentralize and localize. We need to have the local school boards deciding the curriculum and so forth. We don't need the mayor to be telling the kids, you know, what she wants. It should be up to the parents locally. So one of the big problems we have right now is whoever is telling these kids that they have to wear a mask all day, I believe that's child abuse. And so that's a big problem. So if some local school wants to do something besides what the mayor says, that's a problem. So that's what I see as decentralizing the school system and putting it more into the hands of the local people, school boards. Thanks.
Matt, you support a Green New Deal for DC, and you also want to phase out the use of fossil fuels and transition to all electric buildings and transportation by 2050. Discuss how you'll work to ensure access to all for the ideals that you plan to implement.
So thank you for that question. Combating climate change is a critical priority. It's one of the existential issues for our time. So we need to be aggressive on it. One of the things that I'm excited about is the Biden administration's new programs under the Inflation Reduction Act, where there are lots of dollars made available to transition homes from gas to electricity. And we need to take advantage of those federal dollars. We can't leave those federal dollars on the table. We need, as a city, to have aggressive programs to get out into the communities, to make sure people know that these things are available. And it may be that we need for low-income residents to increase the incentives so as to make it essentially free to do this transition. We have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity with this program. Transitioning off of natural gas is going to be a challenge. We face a situation right now where we either will spend $5 billion to fix all of the pipes that carry natural gas, or we're going to have to expedite a transition off of natural gas to electricity. And my view, and I think you clearly have read my platform, is you focus on the leaks in the pipes, which is a terrible, terrible problem that are the worst, and invest in fixing there, but at the same time, move aggressively to help people transition to electricity and greener sources of energy through renewable energy sources of electricity. We can do it. We've made huge progress. We're a leader on this. Charles Sumner said about the District of Columbia in the Reconstruction era that we should be an example for all the land on social justice issues. Here's one on environmental issues where we should be an example for all the land. We can do it, and we can do it by drawing on federal resources in large measure.
David, discuss your view on the research and data points that are out. Discuss that point to the racial wealth gap that's in our communities across DC, and how will you work to close the racial wealth gap?
Well, I haven't addressed that issue in our campaign, and frankly, our campaign is not focused on race. I don't look at people from one color to the other. So I understand that Ward 3 is better off and it's largely white than the other wards economically. I'm running for Ward 3. And obviously I want to have our city as a whole work better together. And what Matt talked about with having the different sections of the education system be more productive in all areas of the district. I'm absolutely in agreement with him that we need to have neighborhood schools function better. But I am not focusing on wealth gap between one race or another. I'm non-racial.
As we wrap, I want to give each of you an opportunity to speak directly to the voters at home, those that might still be undecided. And I want you to take this prompt and fill in the blank. You should vote for me because, I'll repeat it, you should vote for me because, and we'll start with you, Adrian.
Well, you should vote for me because I'm the peace candidate. As the Libertarian, I'm a member of the only party that is not a war party, and we got nuclear bombs breathing down our neck. And so we must stop voting for the war parties, the Republicans and the Democrats, and you need to take a look at the peace candidates. Now, I voted for Tulsi Gabbard in the Democratic primary because I felt that she's the only one, that's reasonable when it comes to the foreign policy. So you should vote for me locally here because, well, I know what's going on. I know what's going on in the world, and I know what's going on in World 3, and I know what's going on at the city council. And we're living in very dangerous times, and we need to be bold and step up. And the voters of Ward 3 need to boldly step up and vote for the Libertarian this time. Thank you.
David?
You should vote for me to send a message to the entire District of Columbia and to the body politic of cities everywhere that not only democratic control, but democratic domination at the level of council is unhealthy, and that we have to not self-silo into power structures designed around party. I am running as a Republican, but I'm running on the notion of political diversity. If you believe in a more healthy body politic, then we must have a non-Democrat elected to the council. And now is the time for that migration. The council has moved too far to the left, and you can see it in repeated legislation. Now they wish to have undocumented immigrants having the right to vote. Sometimes they go too far. I will like to push back against overreach. that is the objective of our candidacy, is to provide a thoughtful and empathetic pushback to the center. Please vote for David Krukhoff for Ward 3, David Krukhoff, davidforward3.com. Thank you so much.
And Matt, you should vote for me because
You should vote for me because I am an experienced, pragmatic, consensus building person who has worked on behalf of our community for 15 years. And I have a record that shows how I operate and how I get things done. I am absolutely determined to hear from people with all different perspectives on the issues that confront Ward 3. So when you think about me, how I will operate as the council member and interacting with Ward 3, I think that my record speaks for itself in how I've operated in my life of public service. And that's what I want to carry forward, working closely with our ANCs, working closely with our main streets, working closely with our villages serving seniors, working closely with community leaders all around the ward. So there's one dimension of it is, how will I work with the people in the ward? And I think I have a record on that, and I hope you'll look at it. The second dimension is, how will I work with people across the city? Because it is really important for the Ward 3 representative to be connected to people across the city and to be able to communicate with and hear from people across the city. I've spent a decade and a half working on behalf of people all across the city. While I was advocating for the renovation of Mert Elementary School in Ward 3, I was advocating for the renovation of Orr Elementary School, now known as Boone Elementary School in Ward 8. The Ward 3 council member has to be able to work with all the other members of the council, has to have built trust with them, has to have established that they are an ally of theirs, they can help get things done. I believe that I am that person. I believe that it will make me an excellent advocate on behalf of Ward 3 and on behalf of the city. I'm asking for your trust and support. I'm asking for your vote on November 8th. If you want to learn more, go to frumanforward3.com. And thank you very much.
Matt, David, and Adrian, thank all three of you so much for joining us for today's candidate conversation, and all the best on Election Day. Gentlemen, welcome to today's candidate conversation. I'm so glad that you've joined us. We'll start with an introduction where you can tell us a little bit about yourselves, and then we'll hop into our conversation. Zachary, we'll start with you.
Hi, everyone. I am Zachary Parker. I am the current Ward 5 representative on the State Board of Education, a lifelong educator, a former teacher. I live in the Union Market area near Trinidad in Ward 5, and I'm running to serve as Ward 5's next council member with a vision of uniting our ward and building what I call healthy communities where all neighbors have a shared quality of life. I've devoted my time in DC to giving back to the district as well as our students and families. And I believe serving as council member would allow Ward 5 to address many of the issues affecting our communities, from violence to the need for affordable housing, to rapid growth and development, to making sure that we unite our ward across as many differences.
Thank you. Clarence, your introduction.
Hey, well, good afternoon. My name is Clarence Lee. I'm a lifelong Ward 5 resident. I actually only lived in Ward 5. I'm in my second home now. So my first one was my parents' home in Ward 5, and my mother still lives in the Riggs Park area. And I'm actually, I'm running because as I'm talking to a lot of folks, that a lot of us long-term residents are feeling left out in the growth that's going on into the city, and some of the needs of the long-term residents are not being met. Both me and Mr. Parker, we do want affordable housing. I spent 3 terms as an ANC commissioner, and as I'm in the Trinidad area. And as you know, the growth we've had in Trinidad, we cannot stem the housing increase because of the developers coming in and getting carte blanche on every time we would try not to have a house be turned into a condominium. One single family home turned into 4 units. we were always turned down on the basis of it's supposed to be more housing in DC, but we needed more affordable housing in DC. So at the rapid growth of prices in Trinidad, quite honestly, Trinidad and Carbon Langston now is even having the same type of increase. What once was an affordable community is now unaffordable. And just merely the fact that because my mother's still in Riggs Park, I cross the ward daily. And I see things that are not being addressed as far as the recreation centers that have rusty nails on the benches, just things that the day-to-day things that need to happen in the city aren't happening anymore. And quite honestly, this is not the way the city was run when I was growing up. So going back, the needs were met for the individuals and the communities, and we felt first. You know, as one of the people here who have been through this city, supporting this city through the times of financial crisis, when we still being taxpaying citizens and not right now in this growth is happening, a lot of us are not feeling served.
And that'll be time for that. That'll be your time for that moment there. Clarence, thank you so much for that. To the both of you, I want to discuss what you see as the leading problem or issue facing DC today and how you plan to address or fix that. Zachary, we'll start with you.
Everywhere I go across the district and around Ward 5, violence is top of mind for neighbors. Residents regularly share that they are not feeling safe, and there are several things that we must do immediately. The district has already started taking steps to increasing financial support for our public safety apparatus. There is also steps needed to make sure that we have a more coordinated and consolidated effort. I was a big fan of the building blocks DC approach, and that has now turned into the Gun Violence Prevention Office. I believe we need to bring all of our many different public safety offices under one umbrella. And so I'm talking about Cure the Streets and Violence Interrupters and those entities working with MPD, the offices within DPH that are working on the mental health front, et cetera, and making sure they're working hand in hand. Secondly, we must ensure that we're extending more resources to the folk on the ground that are doing preventative work to make sure that we are getting in front of the violence before it occurs. And so I'm thinking of our violence interrupter programs in Ward 5 that are proven to be effective. And we must hold those that commit crime and hold others with violence accountable. There is no other way around it, that we must hold those that do harm in our communities accountable, regardless of their age. I do believe in restorative justice, and there's a way to balance the two. And so those are three of the ways that I think the council needs to move to address rising violence. And as the next Ward 5 council member, those are things that I would do to make sure we turn the tide on what we're seeing across the city.
Clarence, how do you respond?
Well, my same thing is I'm walking through the neighborhoods, passing out flyers. One of the concerns that I really hear is the rise in property taxes, making the homes unaffordable for the homeowners. I heard more of that. I was in the Turkey Thicket area where 90 cars were broken into, but the neighbors were still more concerned about their rising property taxes. The seniors are saying, you know, when you have to reach that age 65 to get that 50% cutoff. But a lot of people are not at that age yet. And the property tax in DC just continue to rise, they continue to rise and continue to rise. And this is the only city in the country when you can spend $500,000 for a house and the school system is inadequate. So our property taxes don't equate to the services of the amount that we're spending. We are charged a lot of property tax, but it doesn't equate to the same type of services for the property tax that we're paying. So that's even one of my concerns. And then I say that to Mr. Parker, even, you know, as this election goes on, we need some type of freeze on property tax. It's not fair for the individual, like on my block, there's $1 million house that went across the street. I should not be assessed at the same because there's a house in my area that sold for $1 million. My assessment should not go up based on sales. So constantly, this house that I'm living, if someone's to come in for affordable housing, they could not, if they had a budget of $1,500 and based on the property tax, the way mine has been increasing, they could not afford that house in the first 10 years of ownership because of the increase in property tax. So I found out even from the seniors in my neighborhood and the ANC meetings, the seniors, they even have the reduced rate. They're still concerned about their property tax going up because what I've seen in Trinidad is that we haven't dealt with violence. We just moved people out of Trinidad and therefore, and now it's coming back. in the last 3 years, in the last 3 years, there was a lull in violence. But in the last month, we've already had a murder in Trinidad, and we haven't seen.
And that'll be time on that answer, Clarence. Thanks so much. I want to stick with you and make a pivot and go to homeless. Let's talk about homelessness. What strategies will you use to help district residents that are currently homeless get homes, and how will you help them sustain their homes?
Well, my thing is, when we talk about homelessness, it's really we talk about people without hope. If you're poor and you have hope, you can always rise. But no matter if you have money and you have no hope, you will lose that money. So one of the things is that when I look at the homeless people at the New York Avenue shelter, the Central Mission shelter, just the homeless people that when I see, and at the Days Inn and at the Quality Inn on New York Avenue, these people don't have hope. So they need wraparound services first to build their self-esteem. So to let them know that they're worthy of having a livable condition that's adequate for themselves. One of the things, when you look in the eyes of homeless people, it's just that they're hopeless. Now, I work with Central Union Mission, and they have a spiritual program to help men go through transformation. And that program, I've seen men get back with their families, become married husbands, we can go back and get productive, become productive members of the city. But the thing is, there's only very few programs that are like that. We have to have some kind of program that's worthy of making the people feel that they're worthy of the things. But one of the things that hit me the most at the Quality Inn, when that was a homeless shelter, the little girl was killed by her mother at 11 months. And we were spending $3,000 a month to house her there, but we did not prevent that mother from killing her child. That didn't make the news, like all the rest of the violence are going. That hurt my heart to find out that we spent $3,000 a month at a homeless shelter, and we still did not help that mother. Somewhere that mother felt so bad that she killed her own child. And we really have to address people and treat people as human beings in these shelters. If you go in Ivy City, you see the men outside of the shelter, you don't see people with hope. We really need to reach out and talk to them and help them in some kind of comprehensive way to give them hope first, so they can want to rise up and be better and go back into their homes or own a home or get an apartment or get a job.
Thanks for that answer.
Okay.
Zachary, in your platform, you discuss your Safe Streets plan. Could you discuss how you plan to prioritize bike lanes, bus lanes, and overall pedestrian safety through this plan?
Absolutely. First, I do want to just address the issue of homelessness, as it's a major issue. The only way that we combat homelessness is through housing. There's no other way around it. I am pro-development, and that we need to continue to build more affordable housing for folk to be able to stay in the district, especially our seniors and our youth and those that are low income. We just saw this past week, there was a scathing audit by the Federal Housing Development based on our housing authority here in the district. And there's so many ways in which that we have a lot of work to do. And as a council member, I am committing to conducting oversight to get that done. Last thing I would just say, I was a supporter of a budget amendment last year that went through the council that provided housing for some 1,500 district residents. We need more bold legislation, we need more housing, and we need more affordable housing that comes through oversight and council members that are committed to housing all neighbors, including our most vulnerable. In terms of safe streets, what we're seeing now is that traffic violence is at a height. And that is at its highest in Ward 7 and 8, predominantly Black areas of the city. And the way that we combat that is through road redesign. And so by speed bumps and stop signs, making sure that we're responsive to neighbors, making sure that we get the balance of enforcement right, that we hold those that are speeding through our communities, often Virginia and Maryland drivers, that we are holding them accountable, and that we're incentivizing more of our neighbors to take public transportation. Because as we do that, we make our roads safer. And so those are the three aspects of my Safe Streets platform: road redesign, enforcement, and incentivizing more folks to take public transit. By doing more of that, I believe that we can turn the tide in what we're seeing in terms of traffic violence in the district.
Clarence, you've mentioned your longstanding history with not just in DC, but within Ward 5. And you've seen many people come and many people go, and you are having conversations right now with various residents as you're on the campaign trail. Can you talk about what your plan will be to work with residents to create systems of accountability for public safety?
It's sort of like still in line with, like I say, talk to the neighbors about our problem at the Starburst with the minutes of Starburst. One of the things that when we make people accountable as far as being productive citizens, that look more clarity on that.
We're talking specifically about public safety. So, yes.
Okay, so for public safety, one of the things of public safety, I think we have to get back into community policing and use the community police officers that we have and bring them to the street. One of the things, we all have to interact with the DMV. If you spend a lot of time, you get to the DMV at the wrong time when you have to wait a couple of hours. If you watch the security guards at the DMV that carry guns, they are community policing. They're very cordial, they're very respectful, but they're very firm. And what they do when they go in those centers, when you go in any other center like that, those are the kind of police officers that we need on the street. It's just ironic that I'm just saying those mostly are African-American security guards. We need those same type of individuals on the Metropolitan Police Force to increase public safety because they know how to interact with the public because they do it at a most vulnerable time when they're there. And when we support them, when we have them on the police force, we probably will have better public safety because they know how to deal with individuals. Also, in the same thing, because we have all the police forces in the city, but when you look at like the housing authority police, the same people, they should be on the Metropolitan Police Force because those people interact with the people in the housing community in order to stem the crime that goes on in those locales. So I'm really an advocate for more homegrown police officers. I know a security guard in the public school system, and we really have to be more liberal in what the criteria is for a police officer. And I mean, when I say more liberal, we have to go back and look at people's background. Because he made a mistake at 18 or 19, a small, and just quite honestly, a drug arrest at 18 or 19 when in youthful indiscretion, because I don't know about you, but I really didn't mature until I was about 27. So all those youthful indiscretions, but those same men and women could be police officers in this city and provide a service because they'll know the city.
Thank you for that answer, Clarence. Thank you. Thank you for your time on that one. Let's go to you, Zachary. Generational wealth is becoming the leading goal for many individuals and families. And many studies have looked at the landscape of Washington, D.C. to see what the wealth gap disparity is among races. What will be your plan to help to shrink the wealth gap, the racial wealth gap here in Washington?
Yeah, this is a critical issue as the racial wealth gap continues to widen in the district. And the way to combat that is supporting the mayor's initiative around housing and providing access to housing. She's established a goal of ensuring that 20-some thousand Black homeowners are able to live and stay in the district, and I support that. I also support making sure that we create legacy support systems so that residents who have long lived in the district that may pass on, or our seniors who may pass on, can then turn their homes over to loved ones. And oftentimes a barrier there is that they either don't have the legal expertise or the resources to be able to protect their homes. I think there's also a lot that needs to be done with just entry into jobs in general to help build wealth in communities. And so one of the things I'm a big proponent of is job access, making sure that we make that jobs are providing equal access to all neighbors, especially those that may have experienced homelessness or that may be suffering from substance abuse and what have you. Because we know that when people have a paycheck coming in, they're more likely to be able to turn their life around. And then lastly, it is around how do we look at communities that have long battled poverty. One of the things that is true about Ward 5, we have very wealthy segments of our ward, and then there are parts of our ward that have struggled with poverty for generations, and that is not by happen chance. Instead of just merely engaging in the same old fights around whether or not residents in Brooklyn Manor, for instance, will be able to stay where they are. And I do support residents being able to stay here in the district. We should be also talking about how are we going to convert public housing and other housing models.
And I have to stop you there, Zachary. Thank you so much. As we wrap, Clarence and Zachary, I want to give you a moment to speak to residents of Ward 5 who might be watching and are trying to still make that decision. Speak directly to them and use this as your prompt to talk directly to them. You should vote for me because. You should vote for me because. And to Clarence, I'll start with you.
Okay, you should vote for me because I'm a lifelong DC resident, born and raised in Washington, DC. I've seen this city operate with respect and actually in quality of services. And I like to go back to see that. Also, you should vote for me because I think I have a true understanding of the complete ward. Like I said, I was raised in Riggs Park, and now I've raised my family successfully in Trinidad through the lean years, through the years when there was crime. And I'm blessed that my son never got into the game. My daughter is in graduate school now. So I've been here and been committed to this city. One of the things is that I would like to bring some of the things back to the city is that in Ward 5, when we used to have a ban on single sales to get people off the corners. But, you know, as I've grown, like I said, I still have some compassion. And that's what we need. We need somebody to have compassion, that with that compassion, you'll be able to connect with people. And then with that connection, I'll be convicted to do what they need to have done to help them rise above their circumstances. And also, as you should vote for me, because even though I want people to know I'm running as a Republican, I think I lost. Did I lose? I'm sorry. Okay, but my screen went. Okay, I'm gonna keep going. I'm running as a Republican, but every Washingtonian is a second-class citizen because we do not have voting rights. We cannot do anything in this city without congressional approval, and it's time for the city council, the mayor, and Eleanor Holmes Norton to start asking for some type of autonomy from the Congress. And until we reach that point, we need to be exempted from federal income tax. I don't know when nobody had, we're the only territory that belongs to the United States that pays federal income tax and state income tax. Puerto Rico did not pay federal income tax. Guam does not pay federal tax, and the Virgin Islands. Why are we burdened this way with paying federal income tax, which in turn would give us the opportunity.
And that's your time, Clarence. Thank you. Zachary, you should vote for me because.
I humbly ask Ward 5 residents to vote for me because I've delivered as your State Board of Education representative. We've restarted the Ward 5 Council on Education. We've established a new innovative organization, the Ward 5 Education Collaborative, to raise funds and distribute it to our schools. I've served as president of the State Board of Education and fought for our families. You should vote for me because if you visit my website at zachary4ward5.com, you'll see more than a dozen policy positions where I detail how we're going to combat rising violence, expand affordable housing, build generational wealth, and ensure that our communities have safe streets and clean roads. That shows my level of seriousness. And because what we need on the council is a legislator and someone that is going to be able to go every day and fight for Ward 5 neighbors. And lastly, you should vote for me because we need a council member that is going to bring our diverse ward together, that has the vision, the aptitude, but also the experience on the ground, talking and working with neighbors to unite our very diverse ward. I am Zachary Parker, and I humbly ask for your vote.
Clarence Lee, Zachary Parker, thank you both for joining us for today's candidate conversation, and all the best on your journey to Election Day. Thank you to all of our candidates for joining us for these conversations. Early voting is already underway, and in-person voting takes place November 8th. Don't forget to cast your ballot for this year's general election. For everyone here at Candidate Conversations and at DCTV, I'm Larry Brown Jr. We'll see you next time.